Hey X-Files fans and patron, thanks for joining me for this exclusive commentary, and today I'm going to be watching the first episode of the X-Files, the very first episode from 1993, the pilot episode, and this is the start of a really long commentary project where I do intend on watching and doing commentaries for every single episode of the X-Files, so all 11 seasons, very ambitious. Now, in case you're wondering, this won't affect me doing the X-Files reviews on the main channel. I still plan on doing those, madman as I am, but I also thought it might be fun to do some commentary, which might offer something a bit different for you that you maybe don't get in the reviews. Maybe just a bit more of a reaction type, off the cuff type feel, and just random comments that you might not get in the review so much. So let me know what you think anyway, if you think this is a good idea and you want me to continue, but I'll make a start and see where it goes. So I've got it paused on the opening screen, the big X-Files logo. It's so weird seeing it and not hearing the intro music, because this first episode didn't have the classic X-Files theme, which we sort of know and love, and which strikes fear, and just the sort of intro music that makes you know that something's going to go down, I think. But the first episode didn't have that, so I've got it paused on the X-Files logo. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, play. So we get a documentary style feel from the very beginning. And it's something I always forget, is that whole sort of caption of the following is sort of based on kind of true events, which immediately gives it that authentic feel, even though it's not exactly true. It's sort of true, because as I learned sort of many years after watching the X-Files for the first time, at least some of the stories and episodes are actually based on real life cases. So I guess that adds a whole other level to it. I really like this opening to this first episode. It's just, it has a very Twin Peaks sort of feel to it anyway, which obviously there's a lot of comparisons with the two shows, but yeah, it's such a simple but effective way to bring you into the X-Files with this girl and the flashing lights in the woods. She's got marks on her body. It's just a good example of setting up a very simple but intriguing mystery from the start. It's happening again. And a very young Gillian Anderson, although not as young as she was playing, actually she's the character is meant to be older than Gillian Anderson. So I think it's a credit to Anderson that she makes her feel so mature and grown up. And it has been said by Chris Carter, as we get our first shot of Cigarette Smoking Man, one of the most iconic characters of the whole show. It has been said by Chris Carter that the Khaleesi Starling character in Silence of the Lambs was a big influence on the Scully character, and it made him really want to give a strong female part to an FBI agent. And I guess the rest is history, and we see that Scully has done her research on Mulder. So many stuffy old men in the FBI, but I think it does a good job, the show, of showing how sometimes kind of stuffy old men, politicians, are kind of the most dangerous people, often. Because they are so underhanded and they sort of politic, and you don't always know what you're getting with them sometimes. And we had the first mention of Spooky, which is Mulder's nickname. I think Cigarette Smoking Man's an example of a character who we have the first scene in the basement. Scully wondering what she's walked into. She's just walked into a single man's apartment, is what she's walked into. A very nerdy single man, but I'll say a very attractive single man as well. Even me as a straight male has a bit of a man crush on Fox Mulder. But one of the things I like about this first scene with Mulder and Scully meeting each other is that they both have knowledge of each other, and even though they have very different viewpoints and approaches to kind of investigating, there's still a level of respect, but they're very upfront almost from the start with each other. Mulder makes it clear that he's suspicious of her and thinks she's just there to spy on him, and she obviously doesn't deny that, but she's also saying, you know, despite our differences, I do have respect for you and I'm interested in working with you. But she doesn't hold back. She doesn't, sort of pander to him willy-nilly. She still gives her scientific opinion, like with the case they're talking about now. So I think the chemistry is there pretty much from the start in this opening episode. That's why they put the I in FBI. The dialogue's so good. The very plausible state of Oregon. I just love the playful, back and forth. Yeah, I was saying before, I think Cigarette Smoking Man was a character who originally was only a small part, and they had no idea he would become such a big part of the series. I totally forgot about that scene on the plane where they had a bit of a scare, and Mulder of course takes it as thinking, well, we mustn't be in the UFO region. That explains the plane nearly falling from the sky. He sure knows how to show a girl a good time, taking her grave digging on their first assignment. So this is where they introduce the idea of time being lost, which Mulder thinks is linked to UFO. What is he doing? Just spraying peroxide on the road like a giant X? Just a precaution. Oh, I guess it's later when the whole time thing happens. I thought it was then. I always think this pilot holds up well. I mean, I think it's sort of grown on me over time. There's times when I thought it was like just okay, but I think the more I've seen it, I think it actually holds up as one of the better TV pilots. This doctor sure isn't too pleased with Mulder. Let's go grave digging. I think Mulder being the sort of provocative character he is, there's definitely a long history in the X-Files of him like rubbing like local officials the wrong way, and although I think he does it from a place of passion because he believes in the case, I think there's definitely a rebellious side to him which enjoys it as well. And quite often, at least in the early episodes, Scully is sort of stuck in the middle. Oh boy. Mulder with his sort of macabre humour there. It's a pretty decent practical effect, that skeleton, considering how low budget this show was. In the early seasons anyway. Chimpanzee, Scully says. I mean, a lot of times Scully presents like credible reasons and counterpoints to Mulder, which is part of the beauty of their back and forth, but I'm not sure this is her finest hour. I think suggesting it could be like chimpanzee, DNA or bones, is a little bit of a stretch, Scully. Obviously jump into like, UFOs as well, but would be, but Mulder, take off the baseball cap. There's some good callbacks to this episode later in the show. In this season, and actually in later seasons, where they do... there's things that are introduced in this episode, like mythology, that they do come back to. And that's a sign of good writing. Whether they knew they would come back to them, I'm not sure. I'm guessing they probably did. I will try to do these commentaries once a week, as regularly as I can. Obviously I might skip weeks sometimes, but will do my best to make it a regular weekly thing. I think these like teen actors are quite well cast, Peggy and Billy. Peggy especially. scene definitely shows that Mulder's not afraid to like push the buttons and do certain things that could be seen as like unethical to get a reaction out of someone. I do like how this episode is sort of quite grounded, so it adds like mystery, and it doesn't sort of force feed you too much in the way of like supernatural or UFO type things. It sort of gives you like a credible type base to move from with the characters, where Scully, as I said, I think she's being fair and sort of rational with Mulder, but obviously she's very open to like having her mind changed as well. But also I think it's clever like having like references to flying saucers and her being quite flip about it, and I think that just says a lot of like the language and mythology of like UFOs and aliens are like tied up in those stereotypes. So that's almost how the culture like understands it. So many creepy scenes take place in the woods in this show. It's one of my favourite X-Files settings. What is that guy hiding? He just happened to be in the woods in the middle of the night. Very suspicious. Then again, they are on his turf. I think... Oh, this is the moment where they lose time. I think the cult theory from Scully is a little bit more plausible. Yes, very early 90s. I mean, it works. It makes sense, but the sort of freeze frame. I love how excited and full of enthusiasm Mulder is. 9 minutes, damn it. He's like a kid in a candy store. Not in this zip code. The thing coming up with them, I think, is a little bit forced. Like it's a little bit stretching credibility than someone she's known for, well, probably barely a day she would open up to like this and would get him to like check a mark on her body. I mean, the scene's good. I like the scene, but I think it's just stretching credibility a bit. And I know some people just read it as the network trying to play up like a potential like romance between them. And they may well be right. I mean, the vulnerability Scully shows here is a bit unlike her. And I don't mean that, obviously, you know, the character over the course of the show, she has like vulnerable moments and she's a well-rounded character like that. But to be so easily shaken and this vulnerable, I think is a bit forced. But the scene still works, and I think one of the things they were going for was just this idea of this is her first major assignment, and I guess some weird stuff going on that she's just not prepared for. But it does lead to a very good like exchange where Mulder opens up about his sister. I think that's a very important part of the episode because he obviously explains this is why I got involved in the X-Files in the first place, because of the past with my sister. And it really opens up like the tender sort of human nature of their relationship, because Scully, even though she doesn't believe in this stuff, is still very respectful of Mulder's beliefs. And she wants to understand, she wants to be there for him. This is when we get into the whole, the government are in on this, or they at least know about UFO phenomena and are like hiding it, covering it up. So I think just about all the main sort of ingredients that the show's going to look at are in some way like hinted at in this episode. It's part of what makes it a strong pilot, is it introduces a lot of things that they're going to return to in the series, but it still stands on its own as a story. They stole the corpse? I love that delivery from Scully. It's the first example of certainly in Mulder's eyes a cover up. This is a solid little performance from this actress, this guest star. Teresa, the daughter of the medical examiner. There's sort of a mystique here. Every day's like Halloween. I think there's certain lines like that are like a bit over the top, but they're still quite credible. And I think because of Mulder's sense of humour, I think it sort of fits. But yeah, it's a pretty good mystery to like that with that guy turning out to be Billy Miles's father, and obviously he seems to be working with the medical examiner, and it's like, well, when he says stay away from my son, is it because he's a concerned father, doesn't trust Mulder, or is it just because, or is it because he's covering something up? Billy's a gravedigger, according to Mulder. And Scully thinks Mulder's out of his mind. Does she believe him? Does she not? I kind of suspect not. But she believes he believes. The hysteria of that scene is like really, really well played. Because it's probably the way most people would act when they're hearing these out there theories from Mulder. Now he's got Scully looking at someone's toes. Jesus. Bit of a cheesy line, but shows that the nurse has a sense of humour. Scully has her own theories now. Yeah, this guy's a very shady dude. Although I think he does have some sincere sort of motives. It's like he knows what's going on with in the woods. I think that's the thing. Although there's a lot of like local authorities and cover-ups in this show. I think some of them, I think rationale that they're doing it for the good of the people. And some of them, like Billy's father here, the sheriff, does have, you know, he is like emotionally invested in it because his son's tied up in this whole thing. So I think what I'm basically saying is he's not the most unsympathetic character you'll come across in this show, and he at least does have some, like, there's some understandable reasons why he might act the way he does. And the marks are gone. Explain that one. Has a very sort of public schoolboy Lord of the Flies sort of look to him, doesn't it, Billy? Sort of Patrick Bateman as well. I'm pleased Teresa survived as well, actually, because I was worried for her the way the storyline was going. Cigarette smoking man casting a shadow over the scene. And we see a similar object later on in the show. The communication style device, which sets a whole supermarket till off. again, there's a lot of, red tape and a lot of politics, and obviously things have to be done by the book, and sometimes officials, and I think it's definitely unclear in this episode just what extent the FBI and like an official like that is covering up, how much he actually knows, and that's part of the great mystery of the show. Because obviously Cigarette Smoking Man is a character who we get to know, and we find out later on that he definitely knows more than he's letting on and has a big part to play, but it's certainly possible that character in many ways may just be a mouthpiece, and he may just be a very by the book guy who doesn't want to open himself up to like new possibilities. So they do play it quite straight down the line in that sense early on, where they don't reveal too much about what people at the FBI may or may not know. But I think there's just enough from Scully, enough credibility that she gives to Mulder and the investigation, that there's enough for them to justify it like continuing. And we get our Raiders of the Lost Ark style ending, with Cigarette Smoking Man tucking the evidence away in a file in a warehouse style location. And the door is locked shut. It's a real ballsy way to end a pilot episode. It's fitting because I was doing Raiders of the Lost Ark on commentary the other week, so if you're a patron, you can get that. You can listen to that if you haven't. Yeah, how different it feels with this. Just this very simple, generic piano chords being played over the end credits. So it's not till the second episode where we get the iconic, the classic X-Files theme. And it's such a big part of the show, it doesn't quite feel the same without it. But there you have it, that's the pilot. Very, very solid stuff at least. I think it's a pilot which aged very well. I think I'd comfortably give it a 7 out of 10, maybe even 7.5. I think it's very strong stuff for the most part. And as I said, I'll do these X-Files commentaries as often as I can. Try to hit one per week, at least for a while. So I'll return next week with the second episode, which is of course Deep Throat, which introduces a very important character for the first season at least. And we definitely get some more UFO style mythology going on in that episode. So thanks for listening, thanks for being a patron, and I'll return next week with the commentary for episode 2, Deep Throat. Take care, guys. See you later. The truth is out there.